just to give you that warning that we're being recorded. So we'll get started with recording. And I'll do a brief screen share and just say, welcome everybody to ISABA's meeting this morning. We're going to talk about Eastside safety in the context of preparing for civil unrest and where we are and how we pivot for a safer Eastside. What are some next steps? And I want to welcome us first on behalf of the sponsors of ISABA. These are our annual sponsors, and this is the 30th year ISABA is celebrating our association and organization on the East Side. So we welcome these, our annual sponsors, and also are annually sponsoring us in our 30th year. So we thank Ideal Printers and DV Creative, Harrington Langer and Associates, State Farm, and the Office of Juan Cervantes State Farm, the Sane Foundation, M Health Fairview, St. Paul Federal, St. Paul Port Authority, Highway Credit Union, Metropolitan State University, Sunrise Banks, Walters Recycling and Refuse, Health Partners, and our newest annual sponsor is Mueller Memorial up on 7th Street. So thank you, annual sponsors. We have some of those annual sponsors on the call. If you are an annual sponsor, just give us a wave. Let's introduce you first. There are some of you, fantastic. We have some folks from Mueller Memorial. We have Andy Olson from Ideal Printers, Darren Varley from DV Creative. We don't have the St. Paul Port Authority on this call, but they were on our last call. So that's fantastic. If you run a small business on the East Side or are part of a business on the East Side, give us a wave. Businesses, so we've got Mueller again, Taylor and Mandy from Mueller Memorial. Lynn is with Mackey Companies, and she's one of our presenters today. Darren Varley from DV Creative and Andy Olson from Ideal Printers. We met just a moment ago. Welcome. Patrick, I often think about you and our other realtors as folks who kind of run businesses, and Kai Lawson as well. So there's Patrick Rubel, Darren's neighbor. We often talk about that. Sometimes we mention that on the show. But though it doesn't look like you're in your neighborhood venue, Patrick, today.
No, I'm at the office today.
Oh, okay. Kai Lawson is with Aflac. He's also, I think, about in that small business category. Nathan is with 11 Wells, also in that small business category. If you are an East Side nonprofit, oh, well, David Alarcon is here in a different capacity, but Muni Support is his business. So welcome, David. He's a presenter today, too.
Thank you.
If you are with a nonprofit on the East Side, give us a wave. So we have East Side Elders, Kayla from Eastside Elders, Elaine from Hazel Park Learning Center, Anne from ESNDC, Jean from Cornerstone, Montessori, Andrea from Family Values from Live, Rebecca Nelson from one of 5 organizations she's indicating there. Rebecca, it's always good to, are all of them nonprofits, Rebecca? I think they all are, aren't they? Yes, they are, okay. Other nonprofits to recognize. Did I miss anybody? We're good. If you are from a, let's see, if you're from kind of, Chelsea, you're from Visit St. Paul's a nonprofit.
We're not on the East Side, but I suppose we're a nonprofit, yes.
There we go, getting persnickety in particular about my choice of words. Chelsea Fye is on our board as a member of our staff member at Visit St. Paul. So welcome, Chelsea. Okay, we have some special guest stars on the show today too, who are with us to talk about this. Oh, let's talk about banks. We have any banks on the call? There's Terry Furlong from Premier Bank. Terry, it's good to have you back on the show. He is also the esteemed mayor of North St. Paul. So Terry, it's fun to have an elected that is an East Side, East Side proximate. I mean, come on, like in the eastern side of something. We're glad to have you on the call too. So we've got some special guest stars working with us today. Oh, and some organizers on the East Side as well. So I want to introduce Lee Cron, who's on the call. Lee, if you want to you could turn on your camera and wave to us, or just say hi. Oh, there's Lee. Hi, Lee.
Hello.
Clee's an East Side organizer, works with a number of, is OMG a nonprofit or a business, Lee?
We are a business, a media company here on the East Side, and doing some organizing work as well.
So fantastic. Thanks for being on the call with us today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
If you are a first timer, and so this is a new category. If you're a first timer on East Side Connect, give us a signal, give us a wave. It's your first kind of East Side Zoom meeting with us. We've got a couple of folks, including Clee, glad to have you today. Andy Olson, glad to have you, and Lynn, a special guest today as well. Okay, so let me introduce our special guests, and we'll go ahead and get started. We have Lynn Pingal from Mackey Companies and from CCC. And Lynn's going to introduce the work that she has done in our community. Lynn is calling in from someplace, on the west side. Right, Lynn, unmute and tell us where you are.
I'm so used to not being on mute. I'm actually in St. Paul today.
Oh, you're kidding! Oh, that's fantastic. I'm used to seeing Lynn's background there, but coming to us from
Vegas.
From Las Vegas. So that's the far west side of the metro. Let's just say. Steve Ledeen would consider that, our president of ISABA, a part of the metro. So it's just the far west side of the metro. Glad to have you, Lynn. She's going to talk a little bit about CCC in just a minute. We have Sigal Abdurrahman from the St. Paul Police Department. And Sigal, I'm so delighted to have you on. She's our police department liaison who works with businesses. And I've invited her to come. I invite members of the police department to come every week to do an update with us. But today we're going to have a special update on outreach to businesses and what businesses learned in this safety category. And so I'm excited to have Sigal on with us today. We also have Senior Commander Kurt Hallstrom. And Senior Commander, it's always great to have you on the call. He's had a busy couple of weeks, but he looks good, spry, awake, and ready to party. Thank you, Senior Commander, for being on the call with us today, too. Did I miss any other special guests? I've also invited Andy Olson and Taylor and Mandy to talk a little bit about things they learned specifically in the process of getting prepared for civil unrest and learning more about this topic and this issue. And of course, I don't want to forget David Alarcon coming to us from the far east side of the metro. David, where are you coming from today?
I'm in Chicago.
He's in Chicago, people. So we're really covering it. I mean, we've expanded the territory that Mayor Fry and Mayor Carter can oversee now if we go all the way to Vegas on the west side and all the way to Chicago on the east side. I don't know how the municipalities in between will feel about that, but we won't let them comment. They're not on the call. David, we're happy to have you today. David was the consultant for the Sunray and the security person helping organize the Sunray Shopping Center's security plan, and was a fantastic collaborator and contributor with ISABA as we put together our resources that we've been getting out to businesses. I'll show you just a snapshot of those resources in a minute. But here we go. Here we are in the midst of this moment, and this is a particularly intense week to be shifting gears. So I believe that was a little bit of a surprise. Perhaps it was a surprise to me that we are shifting gears in this conversation. We certainly aren't wrapping up this conversation this week, but we are shifting gears. And so as we kind of mark this moment, I want to invite you all to just take a big, deep breath and a nice long exhale in this moment that we find ourselves. So I welcome you into this moment in that way. A collective release of a deep breath. B. Kyle sent out an update on Tuesday night that essentially was titled that way, collectively releasing our held breath. And it feels like it is a moment where we continue to move forward, but also have some tension and conflict around how we inhabit this space and this conversation. So I've invited some folks to help us talk about where we are in that moment as it relates to safety on the east side and the perspective of businesses and organizations that have been thinking about this and trying to make decisions, as volunteers that have been thinking about how they mix in and help organize and support. Before I hand it over, I'll just say welcome to Stephanie Haar from Jane Prince's office. I know that Councilmember Prince couldn't be on the call today, but we're always glad to have members of our elected community with us too. And Marianne Keyros is coming on as well. So the community volunteers and community support that have reached out to help and support businesses in the midst of civil unrest are also on the call with us to help us think about this moment and what happens next. To tee it up though, I'm going to invite Lynn to talk a little bit about CCC for a moment and tell us about what evolved for the city of St. Paul with the coalition that she was working on building to underscore the work that the city was doing in our neighborhoods to help us get our arms around preparations. So Lynn from Mackey, welcome.
Thank you for a lovely introduction, and nice to meet everybody in our COVID times and our Zoom times. I think we are so accustomed now to e-meeting everybody, right? And such, and it doesn't take away from the human touch and contact. I think as humans, we found a way to still connect while electronically. I think more people are definitely using their phones and communicating, and text messaging things seems to be the thing, right? So with that said, my name is Lynn Pingle. I'm the CEO of Mackey Company. Mackey Company itself is a strategic consulting company working in the entrepreneur ecosystem in the Twin Cities, nationwide and internationally. I came to Kansas City, to Minneapolis and the Twin Cities about 3.5, 4 years ago to assist the Department of Transportation create a entrepreneurial space for the highway heavy construction, and then eventually led to vertical construction. On the other side of the fence, I have a disaster recovery experience with civil unrest. I was in Greece in 2008, 2010, when the country was in uproar, when a young man was also killed by a safety guard or a police officer there. With that experience and what transpired last summer with the death of Mr. George Floyd, I contacted 2 other individuals in the industry, Keith Baker, Consortium of Minnesota, and Tim Workey, who is the executive director for Associated General Contractors. And the 3 of us together formed the collaborative group called Construction Connection to Community. Myself. I'm going to send a link in the chat. I don't want to dive into our formal presentation or anything, but essentially Construction Connection to Community is a gathering of the subject matter experts in construction, our professional technical engineers, architects, and IT professionals fall in that category. We brought in the general contractors like McGuff, J.E. Dunn, PCL, Knudsen, Kraus Anderson, and others to kind of lean in. We also are led by BIPOCs. If you don't know what BIPOCs are, they're Black, Indigenous, people of color. Contractors that are in this industry with every intent of being invited into communities affected by civil unrest. So with that, we created a framework of how we can support businesses, small business entrepreneurs that were affected, while we look to assist, the corporate big boxes or franchises. Our niche is really helping those they may not have the resources available to them. And we formulated a process, and again, it's all on the website, that incorporates our BIPOC contractors, our community capacity builders, our government infrastructure into CCC so that we can assist the community. And what does those services look like? We were doing some pre-boarding services, and materials were being donated. Volunteers were signing up to help the community rebuild. One of the biggest things that we were able to do and assist is have the expertise of the construction industry. I always say the power of the construction industry to build, develop, and rebuild, they're suited to do this type of work. And so with an alliance of capacity builders in play, we're able to provide the support in the city of St. Paul as well as Brooklyn Center. The 2 complementary services is our second box and our third box, if you're looking at the website. The second box is basically going to help the core business themselves with their foundation. Do they need restocking their inventory? Do they need marketing assistance? What do they need to function as a business should they have been traumatized? And then on the other side of the fence, is they sustained any damages because of the looting and the civil unrest. Our construction team comes out and does a site evaluation, provides an estimate of the repairs that these businesses can use when or should they file for insurance. The component of the two is really critical. Why? Because our businesses may not have the right insurance coverage. They may not be aware whether they should or should not file for claims. Several instances happened in the past, shortly after the first civil unrest, where insurance was being filed and maybe it wasn't necessary because they could have found grants to offset it because of higher deductibles and things like that. So we have the backing of CDSZ, which is one of the larger insurers of the general contractors, who volunteered their time to evaluate our businesses' insurance coverages to make sure that if there's a gap between the estimate and the insurance coverage, we're able to provide resources for the business. The key element that makes CCC successful is that we have a mentoring program built in for the construction company. So our BIPOC general contractors and subcontractors are actually in a mentoring-mentee relationship called Work Experience Builder with the 5 general contractors, J.E. Dunn, PCL, McGuff, Knudsen, and Kraus. So we have 4 general contractors are being groomed, not just for this protect, rebuild, recovery effort, but to continue on to other projects. And so that's why we pride ourselves with leading with BIPOCs. So with that said, an update for the community. I think you guys were aware of the damages that the St. Paul sustained. And I'm sure you guys have heard of what happened at Lake Street. If you didn't, there was anywhere from 60 to 80 businesses damaged as a result of the civil unrest from Mr. Dante Wright's death. Brooklyn Center has about 80 plus businesses that were affected. We're working with ACER, which is the nonprofit in Brooklyn Center, in terms of supporting their efforts for the construction rebuild and working with the city on the evaluation for estimates of these repairs. So I think that kind of wraps me up. Paris, I hope that was a good summary of what we do. And we did mobilize right before the verdict and got last minute calls and last minute boarding up. And we did that for here. But our work isn't done because we're still supporting City of Brooklyn Center. So with that said, thank you for the invitation.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, Lynn. There was a question that just popped into, or I'm going to turn it into a question. Taylor put into the chat here, civil unrest is still at play with the Chauvin sentencing coming up in about 8 weeks. Is that something that could set off unrest again? Or what are next steps? As folks have kind of thought like, okay, maybe I'm not going to board up immediately in the city of St. Paul. Are there things that your group is reaching out to connect with businesses about that may be considered next steps?
So for us, we're not encouraging people to take the boards off. We're not discouraging them either. You know, some of the businesses are taking them off of their own accord. What we're finding to be true is while there was a lot of boarding happening, they were not being done properly. They were being drilled into the mullions, which is that brown metal frame around the glass windows, right? And so we are finding from insurance companies that they call that self-inflicted. You damaged your own property, so we're not going to cover it. What you should have done is you should have hired somebody to do it right. The proper way of framing or boarding up is actually using 2x4s and building the frame around the windows. And so we were finding a lot of that happening and such. And so businesses are reeling from not only being traumatized from being looted and damaged, but also now handling this insurance nightmare of what do we do? So now we have to look for financial resources to help them if the insurance doesn't cover it. So businesses are calling to say, please take our boards off. Are we scheduling them? Yes, we are to take the boards off, but we're trying to just say, hang tight for the next 8 weeks but it's a business decision. It's
Sure.
Absolutely a business decision. So if they're set their minds on it, we do remind them, the sentencing is in 8 weeks, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's still your call, but think about that and then we'll schedule.
Thanks, Lynn. That totally makes sense. I was curious whether In part earlier in the week and last week, we were facing, the coalition, both that Lynn is a part of and has pulled together, and the Twin Cities Rebuilding Coalition that meets on Mondays. We're all kind of prepping for how do we get volunteers engaged for massive boarding. That was where we thought we were going in the next week, or that's what we were at least preparing for. And so there's been a shift in that work, I imagine, for sure. But some of the considerations are still the same. Like, how do I secure my business? How do I protect myself in the right ways? And some of that concern about, like, if I were to board up, how do I do it in a good way? So I'm not damaging my windows and doors. Are some of those things to consider. And there are some resources that help folks kind of process and think about that. And Lynn's group has been one of the key ways that businesses have been learning about that. So thank you so much, Lynn. Good to know that you're not going away immediately. You're not going back to Vegas. And in fact, you're right here in our biome.
Well, I still do fly back and forth, but no, CCC will be here. We still have the trials in August for the 3, and then obviously with Mr. Wright's death, there's still some activities going on. Weekends tend to be more sensitive, right? So
Sure.
we tend to be, we're not at high alert, but we are on standby alert should anything transpire. And like I said, since this morning, we're getting calls for boarding up in Brooklyn Center tomorrow because the weekend's coming. And that's probably one of the messages, right? I mean, if there was any message, please don't wait till the last minute to call, because we can't consider everything rapid response when, rapid response is only when there's, looting and stuff like that involved. But if it's a matter of pre-boarding, we're going to take it on a next up system.
And for that matter, Lynn, your platform is still up, so businesses can still register with you and say, hey, look, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you provide. I'm thinking these things through. So there's a click through for businesses right on the CCC link that Lynn put up. For the volunteers that got organized on the East Side, and I'm thinking particularly of Marianne and Lee that worked hard to respond and connect with businesses. There's also an opportunity that we have for our volunteer contingents to register on the CCC website in case we're needed elsewhere in the city, but especially in case we're needed here on the East Side as we go forward. So that's another feature that I think has been identified and as a tool. Am I right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that I do want to reiterate is, CCC is not coming into communities and saying, hey, we got this. We'll work with Lee and we'll work with the capacity builders and Paris in terms of the outreach that needs to be done. If we need outreach for that to reach some of the businesses, we can provide volunteers and support. If you simply need us for boarding, we can provide that. If you want us to come in and do site evaluations and estimates so that your businesses can do, work with their insurance. If you need insurance translations,
Okay.
we can support that, right? So we just want to make sure that know that we are not knocking on doors. We're leaving that up to the communities to knock on the doors and say, hey, what do you need? And here's a couple of resources that could assist you. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. And that was, again, because we are BIPOC driven, we're very, very conscious of community and how we approach community, because it's more trustful when they look like us, right? As I like to say. So thank you again very much.
Lynn, would you, I made you the host. Would you hand host responsibilities back to me?
Oh, absolutely.
Shifting this conversation to what else did we do to prepare? I want to just show you the other work that we did. And when Lynn says we're not knocking doors right now, that CCC isn't knocking doors, ISABA spread out and took it upon and asked our network to help us knock doors and go talk to East Side businesses. So, we did a lot of calls connecting you to information on Thursdays, but we also produced a flyer with the St. Paul Police Department and with David to, sorry.
Do you have control now, Paris?
I hope so. I guess maybe let's find out. Do I have control? Nope. Would you, yeah, so try me again. To see if we could get the information out to people and see if we could spur some action. So David and I hosted a work group of ISABA members to really focus on what do we think businesses need to know about and what would they want to know about and how. And Marianne joined those conversations, and we talked a little bit about what we learned in Civil Unrest last time, and what we think we need to do differently as we prepare. And it looks like Lynn can't make me the host at the moment.
Are you a host now?
I don't know, let's find out. Yes, ha ha ha. I am. I chuckle, hopefully that was a comforting chuckle, not an evil sounding one. All right. So we put together this this flyer to do outreach. It includes the checklist that the chief of police put together, and the contact information for the police department. And we put together resources on our website that would help businesses think about this. How would I implement an emergency and security plan? How would I evaluate security around doors and windows? How would I monitor a live feed that the police are putting together for communication? How do we safeguard customers? Think about contractual services for emergency and recovery related services like Lynn's. And how do we rapidly return to regular operations? We put this website together and passed it around and got this out via the fantastic kind of lifting power of some of our nonprofits. We worked with the Sane Foundation to help us distribute in District 1. We worked with the St. Paul Urban Tennis to distribute in District 2. We worked with LEDC to do some distributing, and that is Latino Economic Development Center, to do distributing along 7th Street. And I knocked a lot of doors with Jorge Samper-Zelaya in District 1 over by Sunray. So we got the news out, and we encouraged businesses to really think about this. And one of the things I want to ask Andy and Mandy, who that's just a coincidence that their names rhyme, to talk about a little bit is what you thought about. Did you reach back to the police department, and what did you learn about your business? Maybe we'll start with Mandy.
Yeah, I reached out and I had Sigal come out to Mueller Memorial, and it was easy. It's free of charge. Just a couple of emails back and forth to set up a day and time. And she just did a walk around with me, inside and out, looking to see the best ways to improve the safety of our funeral home, of our location, whether that be, the locks on our doors, different shrubs and trees almost to put around your building. Every little detail was put into place. Thankfully, at Mueller Memorial, we have a full system put in already as far as cameras and security. Our doors, you have to buzz in if we have the lock on. So we, for the most part, we feel pretty safe. But it was just reassuring to have her come out and tell us that we're safe. I think every once in a while you just need that reassurance that you are doing the right thing. And I think for us, that's what this was, is letting all of us know that work there, that what we are doing is correct and we are as safe as we are able to be. So it was an easy experience, and it was good for all of us who are employed there.
Thanks, Mandy. That totally makes sense. And it doesn't sound like there were any. And so, there's a benefit, like, hey, we think we're doing what we need to do, and that employees feel better about that. And, you can feel like, and you can also feel like, well, like we didn't learn anything this time, but if we, and that's maybe a relief, but also,
Yep.
Well, there's some opportunities to keep learning, perhaps as things change, and I have a good resource to go to learn about that.
Absolutely. As a staff of primarily women, being on the east side by yourself sometimes can be just a little nervous, especially come nightfall and everything. So I just wanted to reassure all of the employees that
Sure.
we are safe. And that's what this was. It was a reassurance, which was excellent to hear.
Thanks, Mandy. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Andy, what about in your considerations at Ideal? A different size, or sorry, Mandy, how many people work at Mueller Memorial at your site?
We kind of go back and forth. I think we have a total full-time of, 4, 5, 6
Okay.
full-time, and 5 of the 6 are women.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Andy, scale of your operation, a little different. Talk about that for a minute and some of your considerations.
Yeah, we have about 70 full-time employees, and we work 2 full shifts. Just like Mandy, we had Sigal come out, and was a fantastic experience. Same thing, walked me around the inside, outside of the building, provided us a report that we shared with our employees. And that was very helpful. And thank you, Segal, for doing that. And what we did, we're in kind of a unique spot. We're right on University and Olive Street. So literally right across the street from us is the central precinct.
Right.
That's got 2 layers of fences, barbed wire, and about 40 National Guard people milling around, although a lot less today.
Okay.
But, the interesting dynamic there is about half of our employees were very comforted by having them right there. And the other half of our employees were very nervous that we were just on the outside of that fence. So we had that dynamic working. And, as far as preparedness, we didn't, be honest, we didn't even really consider boarding up. That wasn't something that we considered. But, what we did do is we just let all our employees know if they had any, anxiety about, what was going to happen, just talk to us. And if they didn't feel comfortable commuting into Ideal, we'd figure out a way to make that work. And same, we told people we'd monitor the verdict, and regarding what happens, we keep an eye on what's happening. And if things look like it might be moving down University our way, we most likely would have evacuated the building if we needed to. But the verdict came so fast and quick that, we got our plan out just after the verdict was read. And so, fortunately, we didn't need the plan. But with Segal's help and we think we're in a pretty good spot, and we feel pretty comfortable being where we're at. We do have a full camera system outside the building. It gives me comfort when I'm at home on the weekend. I can get on my phone and see what's going on. But yeah, and I appreciate the resources on the CCC site. I was looking through that during the presentation and downloaded a couple of things, but we could always be prepared a little better for sure.
Nice. Thanks, Andy. I just want to ask, what did you learn anything new when you're putting together your evacuation plan? Not knowing, like sometimes we put together an evacuation plan for, say, in case of fire, do X, and we'll train employees on this. And, that plan kind of gets dusty in the back of our heads a little bit, like, did anything new come up as you were thinking about emergency or evacuation planning? Or was the plan that you'd made previously just a refresh, like we just need to refresh our sense of this?
Yeah, were you asking me that, Paris?
Yeah.
Yeah. To be 100% honest with you, we really didn't have a plan before this. I think what we learned is just important to be connected to your employees and listen to your employees and make sure that, you've created an environment where if people do have concerns, they're not afraid to bring them up. And, so that did kind of help us from a cultural standpoint, to connect with people. And
Absolutely.
And we had some other kind of residual problems around our building that through this got taken care of. We had a lot of pine trees that the branches went all the way down to the ground, and over time, we did have homeless people that were kind of taking some permanent residence under those trees next to our building. And it was difficult to make the decision to trim those bushes up, and to open that area under there. But I have mixed feelings, people need somewhere to be. But we determined that, on our property with employees coming and going at all hours. So we trimmed up all those trees, and it really made quite a bit of difference. And that was, suggested by Segal again. So there's some other things that kind of gotten taken care of, but.
Nice, Andy, that weren't on the radar necessarily, or they were on the radar, but there was some like, I don't know, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it doing a service? Is it not? What do we do about it? Is it a problem? Nice, that got some resolution, sounds like.
Yeah, and I think you learn too, there's no way to be prepared for every possible situation.
Sure.
We weren't prepared for a pandemic either, so.
Right.
So we're 0 for 2, so. next year, second half of 2021 is going to be really good.
Well, let's just say we have nowhere to go but up. How about that?
Very good point.
I want to ask Sigal to just chime in, if you don't mind, because I know that one of the things that we had talked about was you've been out to connect with a lot of East Side businesses. And so I wanted to just give you a chance to say, what are some things that East Side businesses learned? You know, what are some things that you also felt like, oh, well, this was something that folks could implement that they hadn't thought about. Some others in that kind of category that Andy just brought up, if you've got a couple other examples, and also just a sense of how many East Side businesses, this is for me and for everybody on the call, how many East Side businesses do you think you have been out to connect with?
Yeah, sure. So I think, yeah, the most kind of common things have been trees and bushes. We have like a 2-foot, 6-foot rule. So we don't want bushes to be higher than 2 feet, and we don't want trees. We want trees to be cut up to 6 feet so that people aren't hiding behind them. That's kind of been a common thing that I think a lot of people haven't thought about. Majority of the businesses that I've gone to have had camera systems, locks. With that being said, I know that oftentimes I've recommended maybe switching out certain locks, having some sort of like high security strike plate added to their doors to just give a little bit more security. I know ever since, you know, last summer with the unrest and people boarding up, people have been more aware of adding some sort of like security film onto their glass windows if they're not comfortable boarding up, but still have a sense of security when it comes to people not being able to easily break into their businesses. I think roughly, I don't have an exact number, but I'm pretty sure within the past like 2 months or so, I've done about 20 to 25 businesses.
Okay.
And that is a combination of East Side and downtown, because those are the two areas that I cover for the city of St. Paul. So it's been good. And I think like the most important thing though that's been really helpful is just getting out there and just connecting with business owners and building relationships with people, and then just feeling like they have somebody to be in contact with. And you know, sometimes it can be a pain if people feel like they have to jump through a bunch of hurdles to get their concerns heard. So it's nice to be able to build these intentional relationships with these business owners and let them know that, you know, they can call me and email me at any time, and that ultimately we're here for them to help them feel safe while they're, you know, working, living, doing things in St. Paul.
Terrific. Thank you, Sigal, so much for your work and for being that contact. Go ahead. Did you want to say something else?
Yes. Well, thank you, Paris, for having me. But I do have to hop off. I have another meeting at 12 that I need to get to in person. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. So if anybody does want to reach out to me, they can feel free to do so.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And we have Senior Commander Holster maybe for a couple more minutes too. I want to, David, I want to come to you in just a second about Sunray, but I also want to just say, while we're on this topic of working on building better relationships and connections, something got mentioned in the previous meeting that we were on with the SABA members, that we are moving toward and hoping to redefine a community police relationship. And we really do need our police officers and a good connection with our police departments in our community. We have problems that we need to solve that we can only solve together, but we do need to work on redefining that and maybe coming to a new place of commitment and connection, where community feels like we've got a resource here that can be a safe one that we access, and where police feel safe and able to be helpful in ways that can help us mitigate some of those concerns. So we have a lot to do in this relationship, and I appreciate that we've got community members and representatives from the police department here on the call with us. One thing I'll say in our outreach that we learned, and this is a question for Senior Commander Hallstrom that we can follow up with either now in way of just a question or also offline, is just to say some of the businesses. So I went around and connected with the 4 businesses that were broken into on the east side last week as a result of we think like spurred in part by what was going on in Brooklyn Center on Sunday. We had 4 businesses broken into on the east side. And in one of the contacts that I had with the business owner said, yeah, we barely got our glass back on before it got broken again. And I said, what? He was like, yeah, it was just hours, of this glass being back on before it got busted in again. And come to find out, like, this is a regular person that's breaking into this particular place. And this business has video of this person. They know who the person is who's breaking in. And what they want is a way that they can address that situation without it continuing and without it escalating. So, one of the business owner was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. Am I going to have to sleep here with a gun in my business to keep the place from getting broken into? I need some different kind of response, but I'm not sure what it is. And this kind of underscores some of the problems that we just have that we need some new tools to help respond to. So a sense of that, Senior Commander, or a way that we can reach back to the police department to help resolve some of, when we find things like that.
Well, I'll follow up with that one specifically. I know exactly which one you're talking about. And I'll say that it's critically important that if you have a police call and you are a business owner, that the information that you provide to the officer is accurate. So the owner of that business was out of the country for a week or more, and the investigator made a couple attempts to call and never got a return phone call. So it's difficult for us to follow up on anything if we try to make phone calls and call and nobody returns phone calls. So in that particular instance, now that we've got good contact information for that business, we've had communication and we're working on identifying that individual and other things. So that's probably not a great example of community police relations. Certainly not putting any blame on anybody. Everybody travels and everybody's got another life outside of your business and your job. But for you, all business owners and homeowners, when you're communicating with the officers, make doggone sure, if you want to do me a favor, make doggone sure that they get an email address for you, that they get your phone number and all of the other things that we can use to communicate and contact with you on that. So you all got my contact information, and if that should happen again, you know how to get a hold of me. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is we have people that are pretty consistent on doing harm in our community, and we need a capacity to separate those from the people that just can't afford to live or can't afford to put fix the taillights and fix the hot buttons there, the traffic stops right now today. But that there's still people out there that are going to take advantage. So we have to figure out a way, and as a society, do we care that there's those people out there, or are we so interaction afraid of the police community interacting with the wrong person that we're willing to overlook those things? So we have a lot of serious questions and a lot of serious issues that we need to decide what we want our community to look like. So I know there's a lot of movements around the country. Minneapolis was putting together a non-sworn traffic group. I got to be honest with you, cars don't stop for us. I don't know why. How we think that they're going to stop for a non-sworn individual. So there's a lot of complex questions and there's no easy answers.
Sure. Senior Commander, one of the other resources that I know we have used in the past is a mediator service. If we know what's going on, and it may be something more than just an individual who is intent on bad action, say, do we have options for connecting? Police action may be something that's needed. In some cases it is. I'll give another example in just a second, and then we'll move this conversation along. But I know the police department has in the past referred for like tenant and landlord issues, has referred some community mediation. And I wonder if you can help us with our business owners know which resources we should be calling on in some of these cases. You know, again, where a problem may be able to be resolved without taking your staff's time and without you know, further escalation in the case of, well, you know, fourth, fifth time maybe that we're seeing the same individuals in similar kinds of behavior. How do we're really working on resolving that? Are there some resources like that that Segal or yourself could refer us to, maybe, if we could get those to our members?
The city attorney's office is working on I haven't had a day off since the 4th of April, so my brain's a little foggy. Mediation, it's a mediation-like service through the through the city attorney's office. You know, but a lot of times, you know, it's still the police department is still the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
You know, so it's oftentimes that, you know, we have to go out and take a police report in order for it to get to the city attorney's office. And then, you know, sometimes we have to write a citation then to get the person to comply with that restoration process or restitution in the community mediation process. You know, so it's certainly something that the city is moving forward with and moving towards, but it's more along the lines of making the community whole again. But right now, unfortunately, it's still the police department is kind of the gatekeeper that, you know, so it instead of sentencing somebody to 90 days in the workhouse, they're being sent to these circles, these community restitution circles, where they work out the problems and they work out how the person is going to repair the harm that they've caused to the community. You know, so I'm all for that. It's just if you don't have an alternative intake for stuff like that, you know, we still, you know, need to be called. But you know, identifying the individual, that just because we have somebody on video and somebody says that they think that they know the person, you know, doesn't mean that is the person, right? So we still have a due process, and everybody is, you know, innocent until proven guilty. So we still do have a lot of steps involved in the process on that. You know, a lot of it really boils down to, you know, we got to get to the root causes of these things. You know, stealing lottery tickets isn't a very smart thing, because they're all tracked and they all know, you know, this is a stolen ticket and they're not going to give you any money for it. So unless you just like doing scratch offs and then throwing them in the garbage, it's not a very profitable crime. So, you know,
makes sense. Thank you, Senior Commander.
Very complex problems.
For sure. And some of the ones we need help resolving are ones we'll continue to come back to, because business owners continue to bring these up. You know, this is a particular kind of case where actually windows get kicked in, but where we've got problems in District 1, say, we heard a lot about shoplifting and just problems caused that we need some ways to address. And I know that those don't always, and so there's further conversation, and Senior Commander, I'll reach back to you to have some of the kinds of conversations that we need to have. I want to hand it to David for just a minute to talk a little bit about the plan that you put together, but also, David, if you will, just what kinds of things you hear from tenants out at Sunray that are more regular everyday concerns that they have, that maybe a process like thinking about preparation could help them address. And we've just got a few minutes left, David. I'm sorry, we're kind of at the end of the show, but
no, that's
examples like that.
Well, you know, Sunray is a little bit unique in the fact that a lot of the businesses at Sunray are corporately owned. So all of these stores have to abide by their corporate policies, from anywhere from boarding up to special closures. So basically what we did is we did a plan in place based on what we experienced last May. We spent a lot of time reviewing a lot of social media videos, so we knew exactly where the problems were. And again, we could prepare to attempt to prevent another incident of like what happened in May, but nothing's foolproof. So we did enact the plans, and that was with the full cooperation of the St. Paul Police Department, the Ramsey County Dispatch Center. We enacted the plans where we restricted access coming in and out of the parking lot. We also had a lot of notifications to the businesses at Sunray, basically letting them know that this plan was being enacted, reminding them that they needed to to really take a look and review and understand their emergency procedures, their corporate emergency procedures, for any event that could happen. So communication was key. We did receive some good feedback for the preventative measures that we were taking. Right before the verdict was read, we had our security officers that were basically just monitoring the parking lots for any gatherings and monitoring the entrances. One of the things that we did, which was the key to our success, and luckily nothing happened, was the coordination with the St. Paul Police Department, with the commander. We had constant communication, and one thing I do things a little bit differently, not only in the private sector, but I do have a government background, and a lot of times, the attitude is, okay, well, there's something about to happen. Hopefully, the police have a plan. I think of it a little bit differently. I think that, well, something's potentially happening. What actions can we take to minimize the need for police interaction or intervention on our property or the property that I'm contracted to look after? And the other key thing that we did is we reached out to the St. Paul Police Department and asked the commander, what do you need? What can we do to assist in these efforts? Because of the attitude that we have about that shopping center, and that shopping center provides those essential services to that community, and we need to protect it at all costs. And by protecting it is by forming that partnership with the police and with other city departments.
David, thank you so much. I think this is one of those things that I just want to end on this note that's critical for us as we work on redefining that relationship and building a stronger one. We ask a lot of our police officers and our police departments, and just underscoring what you put right there, they're a community partner. They have limitations that they need to work within. What are ways that we can reach back and also offer to understand more about what you need? What do you need? What can we do? How can we? And David has underscored this from the beginning. It's also a good note to end on. It's not somebody else's responsibility. At your property and at your business, how can you take action that will help mitigate the need you might have for police intervention, especially if what we saw last year, police intervention can't come and help you because they have 19, 20 calls. They can't get there right away. What can you do to help take care of yourself in the meantime before help arrives? So those are good questions that I think we need to continue to circle back to. But in this moment, we're going to continue to distribute and work on this work in particular. How do we help businesses figure out what their next steps can be to create a safer East Side? And how can we broaden the conversation with our police department and our business community to tackle some of those complex problems that you mentioned, Senior Commander Hallstrom, together, or understand them a little better together? I mean, maybe there's that too. How do we understand them and work on them together? I want to thank everybody for being on the call here. We're at the last minute. I'm also going to post one announcement from Andrea at Family Values for Life, and I will stay on the call. If folks want to continue to talk about this or have questions that we didn't get to, or questions you want to make sure we take forward into the work, please put them in the chat, or I'll stay on the call for a few minutes here and we can have any further conversation, but just in a way to wrap up and let folks go who need to. We have an I Love Mom event coming up that nonprofits on the East Side are putting on together as a result of ISABA and collaborations between them, which is fantastic. And I just put the details for you in the chat. Help distribute and promote this to moms in our community. It's been a rough year for lots of folks, moms included, for sure. So thanks so much for being on the call with us today. And like I said, I'll keep the call open and we can have any further conversation that we might want to. But I just want to say thank you so much and have a fantastic week. Thank you, Senior Commander, for being with us. And thank you all special guests. David, thanks for being on with us today. I appreciate your coming on and connecting.
Thanks for having me. My phone's always on. Let me know if you need anything.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. And this is a great question. I think one of the things we'll want to actually circle back to is talking about, what do you hear when you ask that question? What do you need from us? What would be helpful? What can we do?
I didn't share this story, but I'm gonna tell you what happened at Sunray. When we saw the number of police, and there was also National Guardsmen at Sunray, you had Cub Foods that went over there with a grocery cart full of water and soft drinks.
Nice.
You had other tenants that were purchasing dinner for the people that were in the area, just to show their gratitude. So, I think that's key. What can we do to help?
Yeah.
Everything else that's happening, with policing, that's secondary for right now. It's what can we do to help to take care of this situation right now?
Right.
That's happening.
Right. And we're not thinking, and it's been key from your perspective for me to think about, this isn't just about civil unrest. And this is also true. And this is what Senior Commander Hallstrom, I want to follow up with him very much. I had businesses who looked at my flyer and said, oh, we need to talk about what's happening right now, today, not when there's a riot. Like, how do we build a better relationship? Because we're not getting what we need right now. And we don't know who else to call. How do we build a better relationship with our officers that are in our neighborhood and with our commander? If we're not getting responses, we're not sure what to do, as part of a better dialogue that we can help create. And we can do that better when our senior commander has had a couple days off between April 4th and now, when it's not riot time, high tide, concerns, tensions running hot. So those are the things we need to work on off stage that, you have also kind of brought to the fore for me to think about. So I think.
Just keep one thing in mind. And this is only my personal thoughts. Policing is going